House, and Rishi Sunak said that she'd been an inspiration for so many younger women of colour over the years. Diana Abbott then took to her feet, gave an emotional speech.
She did. It was a very emotional speech, actually, yeah, and it must be quite a sweet moment for Diana Abbott. You know, she didn't have the Labour Party whip for a good chunk of the last Parliament, was more or less told by Keir Starmer that she wouldn't be coming back, and yet here she is. Not only is she back in the House, comfortably re-elected again in Hackney, but is now the mother of the House, and that affords... I mean, it's a symbolic title, but, you know, it affords her even more respect than she had before. And, yeah, it was quite a moment when Keir Starmer had to pay tribute to Diana Abbott, given that he was quite keen to see her, see the back of her not so long ago.
Ed Davey came in and we both sort of laughed how he didn't abseil through the door, not on a water slide. And I even joked that Sir Lindsay Hoyle had asked him about his health. Is he OK from all that bungee jumping? Stephen Flynn from the SNP, of course, famously clashed quite a lot with the Speaker. And he said, let's bygones be bygones. Then, of course, Nigel Farage stood up as a party leader entitled to do that. And he couldn't resist a pop at a certain previous Speaker.
Yes, he referred to John Bercow, clearly a very strong Remainer who, you know, in a couple of parliaments ago worked very hard to bring about a second referendum. So you can understand why Nigel Farage couldn't resist the opportunity to have a little pop at Mr Bercow.
And there are a few groans from the rest of the benches. I suspect that's a noise we're going to get used to quite a lot, Kevin, whenever Nigel Farage speaks. He called John Bercow the little man. The guy who tried to overcome the biggest vote in British democratic history. Cue much groaning. Kevin Schofield, thank you very much for joining us in the studio to go over this historic day. And there's plenty more reaction on all of that between now and 4 o'clock. But first, it's time for your latest news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
The headlines this hour: Labour ministers are sitting on the government front benches for the first time in 14 years, with the new session of Parliament now underway. 643 MPs have gathered ahead of Parliament's state opening next Wednesday. Sir Keir Starmer speaking for the first time as Prime Minister.
Now, as in any new Parliament, we have the opportunity and the responsibility to put an end to a politics that has too often seemed self-serving and self-obsessed, and to replace that politics of performance with the politics of service. Because service is a precondition for hope and trust, and the need to restore trust should weigh heavily on every member here, new and returning alike. We all have a duty to show that politics can be a force for good. So whatever our political differences, it's now time to turn the page, unite in a common endeavour of national renewal, and make this new Parliament a Parliament of service.
Well, Sir Lindsay Hoyle is also re-elected as Speaker of the House of Commons today, and Parliament welcoming him within the last 20 minutes. But in response to Sir Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak, now the Leader of the Opposition, congratulated him.
Can I start by congratulating the Prime Minister on his election victory? And as he takes on his formidable task, he and his family deserve the good wishes of all of us in this House. Now, in our politics, we can argue vigorously, as the Prime Minister and I did over the past 6 weeks, but still respect each other. And whatever disputes we may have in this Parliament, I know that everyone in this House will not lose sight of the fact that we are all motivated by our desire to serve our constituents, our country, and advance the principles that we honourably believe in.
Other headlines today: 3 asylum seekers have ended their High Court legal action after the government scrapped the Rwanda deportation scheme. Lawyers for the migrants, who can't be named for legal reasons, were told today that the cases would no longer continue. According to the Home Office, their legal costs will now be covered by the taxpayer. It comes after the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, branded the Rwanda policy a con. Meanwhile, just a day after the first Channel migrants arrived since the Labour government took power, more small boats are crossing the English Channel today. GBNews can reveal that more than 300 illegal migrants have been picked up from the Channel so far. 4 Border Force vessels and a lifeboat arriving in Dover Harbour this morning. At least 6 dinghies making that crossing despite worsening weather conditions in the Channel. Labour has vowed to end small boat crossings by going after the criminal gangs that organise them. Those are the headlines from GB News for now. I'm back in half an hour with more. See you then.
GBNews.com/You're Saying. I'll read out the best of your messages a little later in the show. Now, what do you make of the first Labour government being back on the government benches for the first time in 14 years? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, welcome back to the latest weather forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It is a wet day out there for many of us. Even where it's not raining persistently, there is the risk of thundery showers with the low pressure sitting over Wales and southwest England, and these weather fronts moving north, and we've seen this transfer of persistent rain into Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland through the day. Thundery showers continue to be a risk across East Wales into the Midlands, northwest England for the rest of the day. Could cause some issues in a few spots, but they'll be hit and miss. Showers continue as well in the south overnight. A lot of cloud cover as the rain pushes north into northern Scotland and continues across central and southern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. And that rains with many northern parts of the country as we begin Wednesday. But in the south, the rain less relentless. Still some showers around first thing. A lot of cloud cover as well. But the sun is trying to come through in one or two spots. Northern Ireland, though, southern and central Scotland seeing the persistent rain during Wednesday morning. Some heavy bursts in places. And the rain is starting to drive into the northeast of Scotland. That's going to be increasingly the area of concern for the rest of the day. So the rain becoming increasingly heavy and prolonged across northeast Scotland. In some spots, 30 to 50 millimetres, and in one or two of the worst on wettest areas across northeast Scotland, up to 80 or 90 millimetres of rain. That could cause some issues, some localised flooding. Yellow rain warning in force. Further south, we've still got some rain continuing across parts of Wales, southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland. Brighter skies in the far south and some warmth as the sun comes through, up to 23 or 24 Celsius. And into the evening, it's mostly fine for southern England and South Wales, whilst it's cloudier elsewhere, with that rain continuing in the far north. Friday, drier, brighter weather for many, but still the chance of a few showers.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. There's queues for the M1 on the northbound side, firstly around the turn off of Worksop Junction 30. Heavy back to Bolsover 29A. Stop-start in the roadworks. There was a breakdown. There's emergency repairs in the roadworks southbound on the M1. A lane shut slow going around Nottingham, Junction 25 to 24. Carmarthenshire eastbound M4 queuing, Junction 48 towards Swansea West at 47, not helped by an earlier collision. And in Surrey, a few stretches of the northbound A24 remains closed off for a spillage of diesel. So firstly, from the Bear Green roundabout through towards the Deep Dean roundabout in Dorking, closed northbound. Also shut northbound from the Ashcombe lights in Dorking, heading up toward Leatherhead at the Givens Grove roundabout. That stretch is also closed northbound there on the A24. And for now, that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:37. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. Keir Starmer has urged new MPs to deliver national renewal as he addressed the Commons for the first time as Prime Minister. He hailed the new Parliament as the most diverse in history, noting the election has returned the largest number of LGBT MPs. Former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says the new Prime Minister has a formidable task as party leaders address the House for the first time. I'm now joined in the studio by GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley. So, Olivia, 11 party leaders in total spoke, the mother and the father of the House. So Keir Starmer, first address as Prime Minister, said we now unite in a common endeavour of national renewal. Rishi Sunak struck a very different tone. He apologised once again. He said, I am sorry we have lost too many diligent members for the Conservatives. It's now time to rebuild.
Well, absolutely. Rishi Sunak has been sort of contrite from the moment that the Conservatives lost the general election. He is very sorry, as he keeps saying. I've spoken to quite a lot of Conservative MPs who say they don't really actually think it's Rishi Sunak's fault, or at least a lot of it isn't Rishi Sunak's fault. They're all annoyed with him for calling the election when he did, but most of them think that Labour would probably have won anyway, even if it had been in the autumn. There is, of course, the big question hanging over all of Westminster of when the Conservative leadership contest is going to be and when the next Conservative leader is going to be installed. Now, most of the Conservative MPs I've spoken to, including some of those front runners for the leadership, Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick, have said that that they would like us to, that like the party, the country, to have a pause, to collect themselves, to think about it, not rush into choosing who the new leader is. They point out that, unlike in previous Conservative leadership elections, the new Conservative leader will not be the Prime Minister, so there isn't so much of a rush about it. Ben Houchen, though, who is the Conservative mayor for Tees Valley and is now actually the most senior Conservative in the country, I interviewed him this morning, and he said that he thought they should get a move on. He said that too much navel-gazing isn't the right idea. They need to get on with it. The consensus seems to be that there will probably be a new leader in place by the conference in October. But in the meantime, Rishi Sunak has, of course, had to install a whole shadow cabinet who we'll be hearing from when Parliament returns properly in a couple of weeks' time.
In fact, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Danny Kruger were in this studio last night. They said they wanted a longer period to choose a leader, no knee-jerk reactions. And I asked them last night, what about your Nigel Farage-shaped problem? And today, he had his go as the leader of Reform UK. He introduced himself, and he caused the first, what I suspect will be many groans in the chamber when he took the opportunity to have a pop at John Bercow. He said, I fully endorse you as the new Speaker, not like the little man before you, who tried to overcome the biggest vote in British democratic history. Day one, deliberately, and Nigel was already banging on about Brexit.
Well, I spoke to Lee Anderson last week, and they promised that Reform would be setting off fireworks in the House of Commons, and Nigel Farage already seems to be planning to do exactly that, although I suspect he may have been possibly speaking on behalf of quite a lot of the House of Commons when he talked down John Bercow. There was definitely a lot of frustration with the previous Speaker by the end of his time in office. Obviously, Lindsay Hoyle is a lot more popular, just been re-elected as the Speaker, unanimously incredibly popular in the House. It'll be fascinating to see how he deals with Nigel Farage as well, because I can possibly imagine Nigel Farage maybe straying into a bit of unparliamentary language here and there. Will he be allowed to get away with it? That is sort of what the people want from Nigel Farage. Let's find out.
I think it's a certainty. Olivia Utley, thank you very much. And just so you know, I haven't been able to tell you so far, I've been doing live events, but Lee Anderson from Reform and James McMurdoch, he's the 5th MP, the new kid on the block, they'll be coming to this studio. They'll be joining me at 5 o'clock after they've been sworn in over there. In fact, no, they won't be sworn until about Thursday. There are so many MPs, but they'll be here at 5 o'clock to reflect on their experience today and what they think is a moment, they said, where the fox is in the chicken pen. Thank you, Olivia Utley. Now, moving on, former counter-terrorism chief Neil Basu is likely to be part of the new Labour government's plans to take control of the small boats crossing crisis. Now, reports suggest he's the leading candidate to head Home Secretary Yvette Cooper's new Border Security Command, saying aimed at smashing people smuggling gangs at the heart of illegal crossings. Well, joining me now is the Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control, Robert Bates. Robert, welcome to the show. So, one of the biggest jobs in Parliament is the Home Secretary's job, a massive in tray, and now Neil Basu has been placed in command, most likely. Do we know anything about him and what this might mean?
You're absolutely right. It's one of the biggest issues facing the country, and it's one of the things that really turned voters against the Conservative Party at the tail end of the last Parliament was the small boats crisis. What we're already seeing, though, is the Labour Party seem to be outsourcing the decision-making around this. They seem to be passing the buck. They're appointing a new star, as you say. Neil Basu is looking set to come in, and if you have a glance at his CV, he's been around the block for quite a while in various roles with the police and counter-terrorism. He headed up the UK's counter-terrorism efforts at the end of the 2019 period. But, I mean, unfortunately, I hate to have to break it to the viewers, he seems to be another kind of what you'd expect from a Labour appointment. He's an individual obsessed with the kind of the woke agenda. He's an individual who thinks that the the key priorities facing the police force are inclusion and diversity and equality. He's really stuck the knife into Suella Braverman previously when she was talking about trying to address the boat crisis. She was talking about wanting to get planes taking off to Rwanda and that being her dream. Apparently, such language is horrific, according to Basu. So, I think, unfortunately, his appointment or his soon-to-be appointment indicates the tone shift that we're going to see on the small boats crisis. At least the Conservative Party had some recognition that they needed to be doing something to deter those from making the crossing. I can imagine that under Basu, the priority will be well and truly shifting onto the gangs and this kind of nebulous concept of clamping down upon them with little effort actually to thwart the huge demand that there currently is in northern France to make those crossings.
So Neil Basu, we know he was the national command when the threat from Islamic State was at its highest. He has a firm CV in that front. Also when the terror attacks, including the Manchester Arena bombing, happened, he was the national command. But he's also been involved with Prevent. And Prevent, of course, has been very heavily criticised by being focused on the far right, when a lot of people point out quite credibly and reasonably and statistically the real threat has been from Islamic terror. And there's a huge issue, as we know, Robert Bates, about the people coming in on small boats. We have no idea who they are.
It's a huge national security concern. You're absolutely right. But just to refer to Basu's track record on this issue, as you say, he's been straining every sinew to try and force the narrative away from the very blatant Islamist terrorism that we all know and we all see and we're all well aware of, and instead trying to amplify this notion of a far right threat that, let's be clear, there are people in this country that obviously hold unsavoury views, and a smaller section of them are perhaps akin to act upon them. But the idea that somehow the right-wing extremist threat is anyway comparable to Islamist terrorism is for the birds. But yeah, he's been well and truly resistant of this idea that Islamist terrorism should be put at the heart of any counter-terrorism measures. He was pushing back even against the use of the term a few years ago, saying that we need to have a conversation about how we refer to these kind of attacks, and instead proposing that we refer to them as faith-based terrorism as well. So he's a chap that's very much focused with image. He's very much focused with kind of appealing to this kind of bleeding heart sentimentality that we've seen in a lot of institutions over the last few years, and that arguably under the Labour Party are going to be put on steroids. So I think he's a perfect appointment for a Labour government, but sadly for the country, I can't see that him doing much to actually clamp down on the huge national security threat that is occurring on the south coast.
OK, he's certainly got his work cut out for him, Robert Bates. 300 illegal immigrants arrived on 6 boats today, on top of about 80 already yesterday. So no signs of those boats stopping any time soon. Robert Bates, thanks for joining us, the Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Thank you very much for your time. Now, coming up, we'll head to Dortmund, where England fans, of course, are beginning to gather ahead of our semi-final clash, that epic clash against the Netherlands tomorrow night. Just how are the fans feeling? Suitably refreshed, no doubt. We'll find out in just a moment. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back. Stefan Kyriazis has, as ever, been to the theatre and saw one of the most successful performers of the modern age, one who has made his name in different genres on television and is always a magnetic presence on the stage. About whom are we talking, Stefan?
We're talking about James Corden at the Old Vic for The Constituent, and it's traverse staging. So audience on either side, and it's a fantastic experience. But also it's been done this time to bring everything in a lot and make it quite intimate, because you just have one simple set. It's just a table, office space. This is a new play by Joe Penhall, and it's addressing very, very current issues of safety, especially for people in public service. Doctors, nurses, teachers, and of course, as you know, politicians that are at risk and being attacked. So we have Joe Cox, Sir David Ames, and we have politicians talking about cancelling their surgeries, not wanting to appear in public, teachers being threatened. And James Corden plays an ex-serviceman who is going through a difficult divorce, dealing with a lot of PTSD, also feeling very much like fathers are overlooked, and he wants to fight for their rights. And an old school friend is a local MP, played by Anna Maxwell Martin. And he goes in to start talking to her, and it starts off quite chummy and jovial, and then it darkens and darkens. He gets quite aggressive and frustrated. She wants to help. She's an absolute idealist. This politician's sense of we don't choose who we work for. You know, we are here by duty to work for everybody in our constituency. It spirals a lot. I have to say, Corden, sensational. Really? He really is a fantastic actor. Of all of them, he's so natural. And he has the most difficult role where his character is shifting all the time and becomes potentially quite threatening and dangerous. But then there's also a beautiful catharsis at the end.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true.
You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. England's Euro 2024 semi-final against the Netherlands is fast approaching. Well, they'll battle out a spot in the final where they'll face either France or Spain, who face off this evening at 8 p.m. But how confident are the fans? Well, let's cross now to Dortmund and speak to GB News reporter Jack Carson, who's in the mix. Jack, what's the mood on the ground?
Let me tell you, the mood is absolutely jubilant here. We said, didn't we, that there were going to be thousands of fans here in Dortmund, and well, they are turning out in their hundreds and thousands. Have a look right now as they all have a bit of a sing. Getting the beers in nice and early, but of course, how are they feeling ahead of that semi-final tomorrow? We spoke to a few of them earlier on.
I can't remember a lot of the semis, the quarters. I'd had a few beers. I think we got one of the best squads in the tournament. I think we've progressed. You know, we've got to play our own football. Yeah, just play our own football, get at them.
Confident, I reckon. Yeah, I think we're going to smash it. Really, to be fair, I don't think we've turned up yet for the football, but yeah, you know, like I say, more attacking football from Southgate, no defensive. You know, at the end of the day, you know, we're England. We're going to win it, definitely, 100%. I'm confident.
And Luke Shaw says he's ready to play 90 minutes. I mean, if you're Gareth Southgate, are those two going straight back in that team?
Luke Shaw is. I think he just balances the team out, and I think if you play Luke Shaw, I think we've got a good chance.
He's been more successful than any I can remember, and yet he still has all this labelled at him. If we played really pretty attacking, free-flowing football, you know, everyone says let him off the leash, get him going, and then we got knocked out in group stages or last 16, or then everyone complains again. I don't think there's any winning for Gareth Southgate, to be honest with you.
So there we go. I mean, there's a view from some of the fans already, of course, that are here in Dortmund. You can see them all around us, of course, drinking their beer, having a good time, getting ready for that semi-final. Of course, this is the bit of a break they've probably got in between the game, because it's all go tomorrow, of course. Only 8,000 roughly can actually get into the stadium, but 30,000 are meant to have been making the trip. 75,000, it's reported, Dutch fans making the trip also, because, of course, Holland is only an hour away. The Netherlands border, of course, is only an hour away from Dortmund here. But as you were hearing, you know, in some of those fans' opinions, you know, there are a lot of questions of how Gareth Southgate might well line up, of course, for this semi-final. Does Luke Shaw come straight in? Of course, it was his first appearance in the quarter-final after 139 days out. So does he get a start? What's the decision between Concert and Mark Gay, of course, now that Gay is back from suspension? Does he stick to that back three? England probably had their best performance of the tournament so far because of the quarter-final, playing that back three. So a lot of questions for Gareth, but while Gareth is making their decisions, these fans are having a good time here in Dortmund.
Jack Gosson, a legendary effort there, and well done for avoiding any fans doing anything lewd in the background. I know that takes some doing. Good work, Jack Gosson, there all the way in Dortmund. It's going to be a cracking time. I suspect the party is just going to start, and it won't stop until the final whistle blows tomorrow night. Jack Gosson, you have a cracking time, mate. I went to the World Cup in Germany the last time, and I fell asleep during the England-Portugal match when Rooney got sent off and we lost on penalties. I know it's a Herculean effort following a team, and by this time of the tournament, the fans too are badly struggling to stay awake. Now, we've got loads coming in the next hour, including more on the football. We'll also speak to an ousted Conservative MP in the next hour who they would like to find out who's the next leader from Rishi Sunak. Is it time for a resurgent right wing in the Conservative Party? That's all coming up. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel, and that's your weather with Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome back to the latest weather forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It is a wet day out there for many of us. Even where it's not raining persistently, there is the risk of thundery showers with low pressure sitting over Wales and southwest England, and these weather fronts moving north, and we've seen this transfer of persistent rain into Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland through the day. Thundery showers continue to be a risk across East Wales into the Midlands, northwest England for the rest of the day. Could cause some issues in a few spots, but they'll be hit and miss. Showers continue as well in the south overnight. A lot of cloud cover as the rain pushes north into northern Scotland and continues across central and southern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. And that rains with many northern parts of the country as we begin Wednesday. But in the south, the rain less relentless. Still some showers around first thing. A lot of cloud cover as well. But the sun is trying to come through in one or two spots. Northern Ireland, though, southern and central Scotland seeing the persistent rain during Wednesday morning. Some heavy bursts in places. And the rain is starting to drive into the northeast of Scotland. That's going to be increasingly the area of concern for the rest of the day. So the rain becoming increasingly heavy and prolonged across northeast Scotland. In some spots, 30 to 50 millimetres, and in one or two of the worst on wettest areas across northeast Scotland, up to 80 or 90 millimetres of rain. That could cause some issues, some localised flooding. Yellow rain warning in force. Further south, we've still got some rain continuing across parts of Wales, southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland. Brighter skies in the far south and some warmth as the sun comes through, up to 23 or 24 Celsius. And into the evening, it's mostly fine for southern England and South Wales, whilst it's cloudier elsewhere, with that rain continuing in the far north. Friday, drier, brighter weather for many, but still the chance of a few showers.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. A couple of issues in Yorkshire. Firstly, to mention the southbound A1M queuing for about 15 minutes, junction 49 down to 48. That's Thirsk down towards Boroughbridge. Delays there, 5 miles worth of queues at the scene of a collision. There's a lane shut. 2 lanes are combed off westbound for the M62 from Goole junction 36 to the M18 at 35. Again, a collision. A serious collision in Carmarthenshire in southwest Wales, which means the M4 eastbound is closed from junction 48 at Hendy towards Pentlegare and Swansea, at junction 47, queuing back to junction 49 at Pont Abram for that collision. And the clockwise M25 in the roadworks, a lane closed off. There's been a collision, that's Potters Bar 24 to Enfield at 25. Delays are building. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said Stump.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far and it could be yours. Phil was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, a new era of MPs are to be sworn in to the House of Commons chamber. A short while ago, Sir Keir Starmer made his first speech in the Commons as Prime Minister and was congratulated by Rishi Sunak, who speak for the first time as leader of the opposition while apologising to Conservatives. Next up, the Health Secretary has held urgent talks with the BMA to solve the long-running pay disputes with junior doctors. I'll be joined by a doctor on what they want this new government to do. And tomorrow night, Gareth Southgate's Three Lions take on the Netherlands in their Euros semi-final epic clash. Can they repeat Saturday's epic win against the Swiss, or once again, will they be coming home empty-handed? And early today, the Reform Party's 5 new MPs entered Parliament for the first time, with Lee Anderson tweeting, "The fox has entered the henhouse." Later in the show, I'll be joined by 2 of the new boys, Lee Anderson and also newcomer James McMurdoch, in the studio for the first in-depth interview since being elected as MPs. Now, that's all coming your way before 6 p.m. Welcome to the show. So those MPs are now being sworn in. I'll be joined shortly by a Conservative MP who lost her seat in the election in a what's so-called safe seat. I'll ask her who should be the next leader, what next for the Conservative Party, what do they do about their Nigel Farage problem? And on that point, I'll be joined by Lee Anderson and James McMurdoch, 2 of the infamous 5 from the Reform Party who entered Parliament for the first time today. What do you think they will do? Will they create mayhem? Is that what you want? Should they merge with the Tories, or are the Tories a spent force? Let me know your thoughts. The way to do that is gbnews.com/your say. Get in touch and I'll read out the best before the end of the show. But before all of that, it's your headlines, and it's Polly Middlehurst.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon to you. Well, the top story from the GB Newsroom today. Labour ministers are sitting on the government front benches for the first time in 14 years, with the new session of Parliament now underway. 643 MPs have gathered ahead of Parliament's official state opening, which is next Wednesday. Sir Keir Starmer speaking for the first time at the dispatch box as Prime Minister.
Now, as in any new Parliament, we have the opportunity and the responsibility to put an end to a politics that has too often seemed self-serving and self-obsessed, and to replace that politics of performance with the politics of service. Because service is a precondition for hope and trust, and the need to restore trust should weigh heavily on every member here, new and returning alike. We all have a duty to show that politics can be a force for good. So whatever our political differences, it's now time to turn the page, unite in a common endeavour of national renewal, and make this new Parliament a Parliament of service.
Sir Keir Starmer there. Well, in response, the former Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, now the Leader of the Opposition, congratulated the new PM.
Can I start by congratulating the Prime Minister on his election victory, and as he takes on his formidable task, he and his family deserve the good wishes of all of us in this House. Now, in our politics, we can argue vigorously, as the Prime Minister and I did over the past 6 weeks, but still respect each other. And whatever disputes we may have in this Parliament, I know that everyone in this House will not lose sight of the fact that we are all motivated by our desire to serve our constituents, our country, and advance the principles that we honourably believe in.
Well, also in the Houses of Parliament today, Sir Lindsay Hoyle has been warmly welcomed back after being re-elected as Speaker of the House of Commons.
It's been an absolute privilege to serve this House as the 158th Speaker. I've got to say that 4.5 years have flown. With the authority of the Chair comes great responsibility, which is something I've never taken lightly or for granted. I know from experience that decisions have consequences, but with experience comes wisdom, and if re-elected, I will be guided by that as I continue to be fair, impartial and independent.
Sir Lindsay Hoyle speaking there. Now, news away from politics. Pay negotiations between England's junior doctors and the new government have ended, with representatives of the BMA saying the talks were constructive. 11 strikes over 20 months have caused widespread disruption to millions of hospital appointments. And the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has previously said he wouldn't agree to demands for a 35% pay rise. But BMA negotiators sounded a positive note at the end of today's talks.
This meeting was definitely a positive step, but I don't think we can place a value or a certainty on how quickly things are going to take to resolve or what might need to happen to make things resolve. This was definitely a collaborative talk, and I think it's fair to say we have no plans at the moment to call for strike action.
3 asylum seekers have ended their High Court legal action after the government scrapped the Rwanda deportation scheme. Lawyers for the migrants, who can't be named, were told today their cases would no longer proceed to court. And according to the Home Office, their legal costs will now be covered by the taxpayer. It comes after the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, branded the Rwanda policy a con. Meanwhile, just a day after the first Channel migrants arrived since the Labour government took power, more small boats were crossing the English Channel today. GB News can confirm that more than 300 illegal migrants were picked up from the Channel. So far today, 4 Border Force officials and a lifeboat arriving in Dover Harbour throughout the morning. At least 6 dinghies making that crossing despite worsening weather conditions. Labour has vowed to end the small boat crossings by going after the criminal gangs which organise them. Now, Dyson is to cut up to 1,000 jobs as part of a global restructuring programme. The Wiltshire-based appliance manufacturer employs around 3,500 people across the UK. It is best known for the invention of the bagless vacuum cleaner, as well as, of course, hair care products. Craig Bellamy has been named as the new Wales football manager. The former Liverpool forward replaces Rob Page, who was sacked in June after Wales failed to qualify for the Euros. The 44-year-old said he'll give his full commitment to developing the team and can't wait to get stuck in to the Nations League games in September. That's all the news from me for now. I'm back in half an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Polly. Now, MPs have now returned to the House of Commons following last week's general election, with Sir Keir Starmer addressing the House for the first time as Prime Minister. And he welcomed all new members of Parliament. Rishi Sunak also gave his first address as the leader of the opposition, where he congratulated the new Prime Minister, and he also apologised to those members of his party who are no longer MPs. And Sir Lindsay Hoyle was unanimously re-elected as the Speaker of the House of the Commons, with leaders of all political parties congratulating him on his victory earlier this afternoon. I can now speak with GB News' political correspondent Olivia Utley, who joins me in the studio. Olivia, welcome back. So Sir Keir Starmer kicked off proceedings, first speech as Prime Minister, a profound care of welfare of interest. He talked about we must unite now in a common endeavour of national renewal. He would say that. And after congratulating the new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak simply said, I am sorry to the Conservatives. He said, we've lost too many diligent members. It's now time to rebuild. All eyes now on the next steps of the Conservative Party.
Well, absolutely. Rishi Sunak has now apologised profusely twice for what happened during the general election. Most Conservative MPs I've spoken to actually feel quite kindly towards Rishi Sunak and don't really believe that it was his fault. They were annoyed about when he called the general election. They felt they didn't quite have enough time to prepare. But most of them think that the Conservatives would have lost anyway later in the year, even perhaps with a slightly bigger opposition. As you say, all eyes now on what next for the Conservatives. Mostly MPs think that they should have a bit of time to wait, to sort of take stock, to look at what's happened. They mostly think there isn't much urgency to it. In previous Conservative election debacles, the Conservative leader was going to be the Prime Minister, so of course it was very urgent that they found someone to take over quickly. This time round they have the sort of luxury of time, if you like, because whoever it is will not be the Prime Minister, and so it isn't quite so urgent. That said, I spoke to Ben Houchen this morning, the Mayor for Tees Valley, who is now the most powerful Conservative in the country. He said the opposite. He said that too much navel-gazing would be bad for the Conservatives and they needed to get on with it. I think overall there will be a new Conservative leader in place by October, by the party conference. So I expect that the leadership election will be kicked off in perhaps 3 weeks' time. We already know who the main players are. This was Ben Houchen's point this morning. We know sort of 5 or 6 people: Tom Tugendhat, Kemi Badenoch, Suella Braverman, Priti Patel. Those are the kind of main names that we're hearing at the moment. We basically know what they stand for. All of them have stood in leadership elections before. So his argument is, well, what's the point in hanging around? It'll be fascinating to see what happens with this Conservative leadership race, because it does feel like a sort of battle for the heart and soul of the Conservative Party. You'll have those on the sort of centre wing, Tom Tugendhat perhaps you could classify as one of those, who will be appealing to Conservatives who are worried about losing their seats to the Lib Dems again at the next election, who believes that we should go towards the centre and that the party needs to be reset from there. And then, of course, there are those like Suella Braverman who think that the biggest threat is from reform and that the Conservatives need to tack towards the right in order to win the next election. So I think we will see a real battle raging there. But at the moment, the kind of response, the vibe from the Conservative Party is one of contrition.
And 11 party leaders, beg your pardon, had their chance to talk today. One of them, of course, Nigel Farage, the new leader of the Reform Party. He said, we're the new kids on the block, and he couldn't resist. He said, we fully endorse you endorse you entirely in this job, Lindsay Hoyle, as the new Speaker. He said, in stark contrast to the little man before you, who tried to overcome the biggest vote in British democratic history. Day one, Olivia Utley, and Nigel Farage is banging on about Brexit.
Well, absolutely. Nigel Farage promised us fireworks when he came into the Commons, and he already seems to be delivering on that promise. A little pop at John Bercow there. Labour MPs didn't take it very well. Conservative MPs didn't seem to mind so much. By the end of John Bercow's premiership, there are lots of Conservative MPs who are pretty fed up with the former Speaker. I think we can expect to hear lots of this from Nigel Farage. He isn't too worried about, sticking to parliamentary language, sticking to the the boring old rules. It'll be really interesting to see how Lindsay Hoyle deals with that in the Commons, because he can get quite strict when he wants to.
Yeah, we just see there, Olivia, a succession of the Labour cabinet being sworn. That was Hilary Benn. Shortly before that, we had Louise Haigh. She's transport. She's been on this show quite a lot. She's a good one in there. Pat McFadden was sworn in. And then down the pecking order, we also saw Darren Jones, Bridget Phillipson now, she's the Education Secretary being sworn in. This process, of course, Olivia, takes a long time with 650 to swear in. Kevin Schofield said earlier, this goes on till Thursday.
Yeah, it's going to keep going on, and so many of these MPs are obviously completely new, so there's also going to be quite sort of orientation going on this week. I was in the House of Commons yesterday, and it really was a sort of first day of school vibe, particularly because so many of these new MPs are so young. 17 of them are under 30. So yeah, this swearing-in process is going to go on for a while. We won't really see proper business in the House of Commons until quite a few days' time. You know, this is the kind of pomp and ceremony of the House of Commons. Who have we got?
That's Ed Miliband just being sworn in. The previous minister there, that was Ian Murray, Secretary of State for Scotland, beg your pardon. Ed Miliband, one of the more eyebrow-raising nominations. That's the Energy Secretary, and of course Ed Miliband, fond of net zero zealotry. Wes Streeting there, about to be sworn in as the new Health Secretary, only scraped through by about 500 votes.
570 votes.
Yeah, in Ilford North, a big name in this new government, but scraped through barely in that vote. Anyway, he's going through talks today with the junior doctors. What an entree Wes Streeting has got. We'll have more on those strikes and those talks later in the show. Olivia, thank you very much for joining me in the studio. Now, as we heard there, Rishi Sunak said in his speech he was sorry to many Conservative members who lost their seats. And on that point now, I'm joined by the former Conservative MP for South East Cornwall, Cheryl Murray. Cheryl, welcome to the show. So you were one of those who fought valiantly, you fought hard, you had what was previously considered a very safe seat. Unfortunately, you lost your seat. Where do you think that the campaign, where do you think the Conservatives went wrong?
One of the things I noticed as I was going around knocking on doors, we were like the Speaker, over 25,000 steps a day, constantly knocking on doors. People were disillusioned with the Conservatives. They didn't like the past bickering. And they were saying to me, Cheryl, we're not blaming you, but the National Party has run out of steam. We don't like the bickering, and it's time for a change.
And in terms of that change, we've already talked in the studio here about a few of the runners and riders. We had Robert Jenrick on the show yesterday. He's making a pledge. Suella Braverman. Priti Patel is another name that's leapt to mind. Where do you think the party should be going? There's been a lot of talk about the party should go back to a more conservative side, a more right-wing side. At the same time, other people saying you only win from the centre. Cheryl Murray, where do you think the party should be heading?
Well, we need somebody who's had a lot of experience being involved with the Conservative Party for decades. And I think somebody who can put together a Conservative strategy and be wide-ranging as well. And I think that candidate could be Priti Patel. She hasn't declared she's standing, but Priti, if you're listening, I really hope that you will put your name forward. My members absolutely love her. She's gone around the country for years, speaking to the members, visiting events. She did one in my constituency, and people who are Conservative traditional voters trust her. So I really, really hope that Priti will put her name forward, and she will be one of the two candidates to go before the membership, because I think she's got the track record with the Conservative Party. When she was very, very young, I remember seeing her on the stage at the party conference. And so she's stuck with our party. She isn't a newcomer. She's been around for a very, very long time. She's seen the party through very difficult times as well. And I think she would would be the one who could take our party forward.
Well, Cheryl, we're seeing another couple of candidates there who might fancy their chances. Kemi Badenoch just being sworn in there, James Cleverly, Jeremy Hunt before him. What do you do, Cheryl Murray, about your Nigel Farage-shaped problem? Undeniably, the Reform Party, 5 MPs sworn in today, caused a huge headache for the Conservative Party at the electoral polling stations in this election. A lot of talk about, is there any room in the Conservative Party for somebody like Nigel Farage? Priti Patel has come out saying absolutely not. People like Nigel Farage don't belong in the party. So long as that kind of talk continues, Cheryl Murray, surely the votes will sorely just be split. Okay, Cheryl Murray, so I want to ask you about what you think you should do about Nigel Farage. Some candidates have come out. Robert Jenrick said yesterday there is no place in the Conservative Party for Nigel Farage. Priti Patel, although she danced with him at the Conservative Party conference, was suitably scathing too. What do you do about your Farage-shaped problem?
Well, I don't think there is room for Nigel Farage in the Conservative Party. When I was knocking on doors, people were saying to me they wanted to send a message, but they didn't want a Labour government. I think a lot of people put their cross by reform on the ballot paper, thinking it wouldn't really make a difference. And now they've seen what that's done. And I think people will be reflecting on that. And we haven't lost Conservative voters. They wanted to send us a message. So we need a leader now who can actually bring those voters back, give them the confidence. And I think that person is somebody who's had a lot of experience over a number of years in the party, and that's Priti Patel.
But Cheryl, we hear all the time from GB News viewers, we get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of messages every day. And the same thing they say all the time is the Conservative Party simply stopped being Conservative. You're a party wedded to net zero, a party wedded to high taxation. We've seen record immigration on your watch. Many people feel that the party was terminally divided over Brexit. It was only the Brexit Party that got the Conservatives to be Conservative. Many people say it's the Reform Party are actually making the Conservatives be Conservative. So how can you say that the answer is just to dismiss Nigel Farage and they're just lending their vote? Perhaps, actually, people are fed up of your party.
Well, I think you're looking backwards. I think we need to look forwards. If we elect a leader who then will set out a strategy with Conservative principles, you can't actually say Nigel Farage would be the person to compete with us, because that new leader would put their strategy in place and put their set of ideas in place. And I genuinely believe that that person would be Priti, and I really hope that she is going to put her name forward, because she's very forward-thinking. She thinks strategically. She has true Conservative principles at her heart and has been loyal to the party for decades. And so I think it's time that we had a true Conservative as leader who can put forward Conservative principles and a plan to take the fight to Starmer.
OK, Cheryl Murray, I don't know, I'm just getting an inkling you might be backing Priti Patel. Cheryl Murray, the former Conservative MP for South East Cornwall, thank you very much for joining us here on GB News this afternoon. Thank you very much. Now, the MPs there are continuing to get sworn in. This process, as I said, will carry on now for several days in various sessions. Got to be said, a lot of your messages coming in are saying this pageantry needs to be over with. Let's get back to the proper business of running the country. Now, on the way, we'll be discussing whether new Health Secretary Wes Streeting can finally end the long-running pay dispute with junior doctors and end the strikes. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, time for the best part of the show, our Greatest Britain, where we share amazing people who do amazing things. And this week, that is Dr. Leo Cheng and Reverend Hilary Cheng.
Well, Dr. Chen regularly serves as a volunteer surgeon aboard the Mercy ships in West Africa and has recently served his 17th mission aboard the ships. He volunteers with his wife, Reverend Hilary Cheng, a Methodist minister in the UK.
Thank you for joining us, and what a privilege. So just briefly explain, what are Mercy ships?
Well, Mercy ship provide world-class surgery on the ship, and the ship then sail to these poorest of the poor country because there's no infrastructure to get road or rail there. And we offer free surgery and also education, training of medical staff, and partner with the local or the host nation to build up their surgical and anaesthetic services.
So how long have you been travelling West Africa? You go on all these different ships, different ports, and you treat the needy and the vulnerable. How long have you both been doing this?
20 years.
20 years?
Just over 20 years.
And you take the time to do this out of your own holiday from work. Why do you do it?
Well, because I'm indebted to the education in this country with all the qualification I get. And NHS is great. I love the NHS because without NHS, we see cases that we see in the low-income country. And I want to make use of my hand to help those people who have no way of helping themselves, because the tumours, the deformities, not just a physical ailment, but it's being ostracised and die early, commit suicide because they've been ostracised by their family.
When you're on the ship, you are seeing the very worst that the country can offer. I find it a great privilege to work alongside these people.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:25. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. We can bring you live pictures now as the United Kingdom's new Parliament of MPs are continue to be sworn into the House of Commons chamber. As you can see on your screen, 650 MPs being sworn in. Today is their first day back at school, as it were. This process apparently goes on until Thursday. There are so many of them being sworn in. That's Damien Hines there, Conservative, now, of course, in the opposition. Now, moving on, Health Secretary Wes Streeting held talks with the British Medical Association in a bid to end strike action to reach a new pay deal. Now, the BMA says the meeting was a positive step, but will they come to an agreement or will strike action continue? Well, I'm now joined by a man who knows the answer to that question, Charlie Peters, who joins me in the studio in Westminster. Charlie, so the first day for Wes Streeting, the first proper day sitting down with the BMA, 35% was their pay demand, 11 strikes in 20 months. Will this finally come to an end?
Well, it's top of Wes Streeting's agenda. It's clear that he knows he has to get this sorted, especially as we're going into a recess at the end of this month and the current mandate for strikes from the BMA goes until September the 19th. So if they don't get it sorted soon, there is that possibility of strikes appearing in the spring. And before this meeting today at the Department of Health and Social Care, Wes Streeting said that he was optimistic about the situation, and he needs to be, because as you said, all those strikes, 11 in 20 months. The last round of strikes, the 5 days from the 27th until the 2nd of July, we had some 23,000 staff walking out, which led to over 62,000 appointments being cancelled. This is added to an extensive waiting lists on the NHS, over 6.3 million people waiting for some procedure, an appointment or operation, which is almost double what it was before the coronavirus pandemic. Well, Earlier, outside the Department for Health and Social Care, the two BMA junior doctor co-chairs said they were hoping for more collaboration with the new Health Secretary.
This meeting was definitely a positive step, but I don't think we can place a value or a certainty on how quickly things are going to take to resolve or what might need to happen to make things resolve. This was definitely a collaborative talk, and I think it's fair to say we have no plans at the moment to call for strike action.
So China, they've got no plans for strike action. There's been a change of management, but the reality remains we're potless. We're £2.7 trillion in national debt. There isn't really a huge amount of money, certainly not for a 35% pay rise. The NHS, of course, is a huge electoral issue for the Labour Party, but will we see any real change? It's the same challenges remain. We're still broke.
Well, there's a commitment to no immediate strike action from the BMA junior doctor team there. But I think that there was also another interesting snippet in the statement, the brief statement they gave outside in Westminster today, where they said that the Health Secretary now had recognised that there had been a real terms pay cut. They said that the previous administration had not done that. And so this new Secretary of State, they said, was more understanding of the situation. They said this was a prerequisite towards getting the right information on that 35% pay rise. Now, it's not going to happen. Even while they're in opposition, Labour said that wasn't going to happen. Wes Streeting said they're not going to meet that demand. He said that any trade union worth their salt would come at Labour immediately if they gave that 35%. But England has yet to determine their deal with the BMA. In Scotland was the only one of the 4 home nations that did not have people striking while they went through this process. They eventually agreed to a 12.4% pay rise. So I think the BMA's strategy could pay off here, where they push for a significant figure and settle for something less. But the real challenge now for Labour is how do they find that cash? As you say, the country is broken. At the same time as Wes Streeting is having to deftly navigate this situation with the BMA, the new Chancellor is saying that the public finances are worse than they ever have been since the Second World War. This is potentially pretext for a new autumn statement. And it has been criticised by some Conservatives who have said, well, all the information's been public, it's been in the OBR, it's been in all the parliamentary boards. What are you saying that you didn't know before you came into office last week? But so long as that's the position from Labour, so long as that's the noise coming out of the Treasury, how Wes Streeting can justify that more money for the junior doctors, that's a big challenge.
And Charlie Peters, a lot of people will be saying that precise thing. Will all the unions be queuing up to knock at the door of 10 Downing Street? If you cave to the junior doctors, what next? The Royal College of Nursing, Mick Lynch, the mind boggles. Charlie Peters, thank you very much. Excellent as ever. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, very shortly, we'll continue the discussion with the former chairman of the BMA GPs Committee, and also between now and 5 o'clock, Tony Blair is back calling the shots for the Labour Party as he predicts Sir Keir Starmer will have to put up taxes by an eye-watering 50 billion quid. Is Blair back? Did he ever go away? Who's really in control? But first, it's time for your latest news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
The headlines this hour: Labour ministers are sitting on the government front benches for the first time in 14 years today, with a new session of Parliament now underway. 643 MPs gathered ahead of Parliament's state opening and are currently being sworn in as MPs. Sir Keir Starmer paid tribute to colleagues past and present as he made his first appearance in the Commons since becoming PM. As you've been hearing, pay negotiations between England's junior doctors and the new government have ended, with representatives of the British Medical Association saying the talks had been constructive. 11 strikes over 20 months caused widespread disruption to millions of hospital appointments, and the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, previously said he wouldn't agree to demands for a 35% pay rise. 3 asylum seekers have ended their High Court legal action after the government scrapped the Rwanda deportation scheme. Lawyers for the migrants, who can't be named, were told today their cases would be no longer proceeding to court. And according to the Home Office, their legal costs will now be covered by the taxpayer. It comes after the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, branded the Rwanda policy a con. Meanwhile, just a day after the first illegal migrants arrived since the Labour government took power, More small boats are crossing the English Channel today. GB News can confirm that more than 300 illegal migrants have been picked up from the Channel so far. 4 Border Force vessels and a lifeboat arrived in Dover Harbour this morning. At least 6 dinghies, we understand, made the crossing despite worsening weather conditions. Labour has vowed to end the small boat crossings by going after the criminal gangs which organised them. And Dyson is to cut up to 1,000 jobs as part of a global restructuring programme. The Wiltshire-based appliance manufacturer employs roughly 3,500 people across the UK and is best known for the invention of the bagless vacuum cleaner, domestic fans and hairstyling products. Those are your latest GB News headlines. I'm back in half an hour with more. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Polly. Now, if you want to get in touch with us here at GB News, simply go to gbnews.com/your say, and I'll read out the best of your messages a little later in the show. And I've got 2 Reform MPs joining me in a short while in the studio here. What would you like to ask them? It's their first day at work. Get firing. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, welcome back to the latest weather forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It is a wet day out there for many of us. Even where it's not raining persistently, there is the risk of thundery showers with low pressure sitting over Wales and southwest England, and these weather fronts moving north, and we've seen this transfer of persistent rain into Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland through the day. Thundery showers continue to be a risk across East Wales into the Midlands, northwest England for the rest of the day. Could cause some issues in a few spots, but they'll be hit and miss. Showers continue as well in the south overnight. A lot of cloud cover as the rain pushes north into northern Scotland and continues across central and southern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. And that rains with many northern parts of the country as we begin Wednesday. But in the south, the rain less relentless. Still some showers around first thing. A lot of cloud cover as well. But the sun is trying to come through in 1 or 2 spots. Northern Ireland, though, southern and central Scotland seeing the persistent rain during Wednesday morning. Some heavy bursts in places. And the rain is starting to drive into the northeast of Scotland. That's going to be increasingly the area of concern for the rest of the day. So the rain becoming increasingly heavy and prolonged across northeast Scotland. In some spots, 30 to 50 millimetres, and in 1 or 2 of the worst on wettest areas across northeast Scotland, up to 80 or 90 millimetres of rain. That could cause some issues, some localised flooding. Yellow rain warning in force. Further south, we've still got some rain continuing across parts of Wales, southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland. Brighter skies in the far south and some warmth as the sun comes through, up to 23 or 24 Celsius. And into the evening, it's mostly fine for southern England and South Wales, whilst it's cloudier elsewhere, with that rain continuing in the far north. Friday, drier, brighter weather for many, but still the chance of a few showers.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. The southbound A1M still slow away from Thirsk at junction 49. That follows an earlier collision that's now cleared. Delays quite haven't cleared as yet. Westbound M62 is queuing for about half an hour. So Gould junction 36 to the M18 at 35 takes about half an hour to get through. 2 lanes are shut, a 4-mile queue at the scene of a collision. Better news in Carmarthenshire. The eastbound M4 in southwest Wales has reopened from Hendy at 48 towards Swansea West at 47. Follows an earlier collision there, so back on the move, albeit very slowly, queuing back to Pont Abram junction 49. And the clockwise M25 in the roadworks, Potters Bar junction 24 towards Enfield 25. That continues to queue, of course not helped there by an earlier accident. And for now, that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back, 4:37. Now let's continue the discussion on junior doctor crunch talks. And joining me now is the former chairman of the BMA GPs Committee, Dr. Lawrence Buckman. Dr. Buckman, delighted to have you on the show. So we have a change of management. The Labour Party now in power. Wes Streeting, what a task he has ahead of him. 11 strikes in 20 months, 35% pay rise demand all the way back to 2010. This back pay demand. But the fact of the matter is, Dr. Buckman, with £2.7 trillion in national debt, old Mother Hubbard went to the cupboard is bare. Can we expect to see a more reasonable negotiation come in from the junior doctors?
Yes, I think so. I've negotiated for a very long time with both kinds of party, and I think talking is always better than not talking. And a sense of realism is more likely to be listened to when there's a conciliatory noise coming from both sides. So I think there's an opportunity here for both sides to step back from the cliff edge and say, OK, 35% is probably not deliverable for reasons you've just said. So what can we do to get as close to your line as we need to, so that the health service can improve? Because as everybody agrees, it's broken. And how do you improve that? Some of this is to do with mood music, which is actually very important, how people are treated, not just financially. Currently, NHS staff, well, up to this week anyway, have not been treated very well, and I don't mean in financial terms. And that can change merely by the noise the Secretary of State makes. Then on top of that, there's money, and then there's what is constructively called productivity. In other words, what do we get for the money that we're using? And I think there are so many opportunities to look at what they do, what junior hospital doctors do, and see how we can adjust their pay and conditions and the mood music without digging into a massive national debt.
And of course, though, Dr. Buckman, we have the additional issue. This is the first of the union demands that the Labour Party is facing. There will be a sinuous queue of other unions, no doubt, licking their lips if the junior doctors get a hefty chunk thrown their way. So lots depending on this first negotiation. With all of that in mind, and putting your huge experience onto the table, what do you think is a suitably democratic landing point for both parties?
I think a compromise where both of them feel they've won, recognising that the extreme position of you will get nothing and we will not talk to you versus we demand 35% or else we're going on strike. Those two extreme edges are not going to work. So what you have to do is come to some position in the middle, which is not salami slicing your way to a midpoint, but actually agreeing what a midpoint could credibly look like, including to Treasury. Treasury sit in on all the negotiations. The idea that somehow whatever comes out of negotiations is a big shock to Treasury is nonsense. They know exactly what's going on, and the government side will be very aware of what Treasury's parameters are, and so will the BMA's negotiators, I am sure. We never went into a negotiation with any surprise about what Treasury would permit, and I'm sure this is the case for the juniors.
OK, Dr. Buckman, you talk about slicing the salami, but let's put some proper meat on the bone. What figure do you think would be suitable to the junior doctors? I've asked many Labour ministers on the show before, would you throw them 10%? Would you throw them 15%? Of course, they wouldn't be drawn. But what would you think is a reasonable amount for the doctors to accept?
Right. I'm going to give you a complicated answer, which is I don't know. And the reason I don't know is not because I'm playing coy, because the package around the money determines how much the deal is actually worth. For example, just out of thin air, we say they never have to do out-of-hours work again. All right? That's worth a certain amount of money, actually quite a lot. And you could refund. You could give them 35% on day work, but they'd never earn anything for out of hours, which means to the Treasury probably wouldn't make any difference at all. But of course, we're not going to run a health service where junior doctors don't do any out of hours because the service would stop. So if you look at it like that, there isn't a figure that you reach. What you do is say, how close can we get to our mutually agreed goal, which clearly will start, I'm guessing, where the Scottish doctors agreed. That must be a starting point. And as a taxpayer, I don't want to see huge amounts of tax go out to pay one group of workers who are then, as you say, going to be followed by other groups of workers, quite rightly. And so everybody has to be mindful of the people who are behind us as well as those who are in front. And the enemy are always behind you, by the way, not in front. And how do you come to a deal that says we've got as best as we can get, we are not going to get what we think we deserve, we recognise that Treasury are not going to wear any more than this, but there will be a deal that enables us to look back and say we got a good deal out of the government, even though much of it was not cash. 35%, whilst it's completely historically understandable, is not realistic, I think. So there has to be a way of moving towards a more realistic goal. If I was the government, I would start at 12%. And if I was the BMA, I'd probably start a good bit higher than that and see how we could get to a compromise position.
Good. We got there in the end. Spoken like a true diplomat, and obviously a fellow that's been very involved in these negotiations before. Thanks very much for joining us, former chairman of the BMA GPs Committee, Dr. Lawrence Bookman. Excellent stuff. Thank you. Now it's time now for the Great British Giveaway, and your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, an astonishing £30,000. Now it's totally tax-free, which means you get your hands on the lot to do whatever you want with. Here's all the details that you need for your chance to become our next big winner.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Phil was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, Pong live the king, because King Charles has launched a new aftershave, but it comes with an eye-watering price tag. You won't believe how much it is, I'll tell you shortly. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In World War I, 309 men from Britain and the Commonwealth never came home because they'd been shot at dawn. The majority were killed for desertion, cowardice and sleeping at post. Appearing at their court-martials and told they'd brought shame on their country, these men had no opportunity to defend themselves and were executed by a firing squad. The National Memorial Arboretum launched a fundraising campaign to restore the memorial, which has stood for more than 20 years.
Thank you to your viewers for their support for the fundraising campaign, and thanks to the generosity of so many people, we've been able to replace all 309 of the posts that represent those young men that were shot in the First World War. Restoration of this really precious memorial.
The centrepiece of the memorial is the young soldier, blindfolded and facing his execution. In September 1916, Private Harry Farr was ordered to the front. Already suffering from shell shock, he was overwhelmed and refused his orders. He was court-martialed, and in a trial lasting only 20 minutes, he was sentenced to death. On the day of his execution, he faced the firing squad without a blindfold. Janet Booth is Private Farr's granddaughter and was part of the public campaign to have those who were shot at dawn officially pardoned.
When I asked my gran, do you know where I could find Harry's grave? And she looked at my mother, and there was this sort of look between them, and then she said, well, he hasn't got a grave because they didn't warrant, he deserved one because he was shot as a coward and had let his country down. We can come here as a family and pay our respects to him, and also for all the other families, it's somewhere to come and remember their loved ones.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:48. I'm Martin Daubney, and this is GB News. And we can bring you live pictures now as the United Kingdom's new Parliament of MPs are currently being sworn in the House of Commons chamber. You see Dawn Butler is on her way there. This goes on now, I think, for quite some time. Kevin Schofield at the top of the show said it goes on for a couple of days. We don't know when the Reform MPs are being sworn in. I hope it's not 5 o'clock, because two of them are due in this studio, Lee Anderson and James McMurdoch, the newborn. This is Luke Pollard there, Labour Party, and there's Dawn Butler getting sworn in next. Come back to that later in the show. Now moving on, King Charles has launched his own aftershave, costing, wait for it, an eye-watering 135 quid for a 100 millilitre bottle, promising buyers that they can smell just like the gardens of his Highgrove country pile. Now, this is something that Meghan Markle would do, surely not the King. Is this a case of King Charles selling out, watering down the brand just like Meghan? Well, join me now to discuss this is the royal broadcaster, Helena Chard. Helena, welcome to the show.
Martin,
often on the
hi.
show, we've had a pop at Meghan Markle, the Sussexers, for selling out, for flogging strawberry jam, and now the King is flogging Pong. Is this really the right royal thing to do?
Do you know what? So the joy of luxury Highgrove splash, at the end of the day, Highgrove is such a special place, and the Highgrove shop sells amazing things on there. And as we know, the profit actually goes towards charity. So it's the King's Foundation, which was formed in 1986. Profits go towards educational and training, and it's all to do with this sort of sustainable world. It sounds expensive, but it is something very special. It's been made in association with True Fit and Hill, and that's the oldest barber shop known so that was formed in 1805. It's a beautiful smell. It embodies excellence and elegance and sophistication, and it's got all the lovely, lively citrus notes and cedarwood, which is very, very important because that's a cedar tree that's known for that area. The gardens, so the Highgrove Estate gardens are truly stunning. And although it's like £135, you're not going to be using that, in one big bulk. It's something special, it's luxurious, and it will last a long time. And 100 mil, I don't know about you, but I think that's a pretty good size. And I just think the whole sensory journey, I completely find it very exciting. And if you think about it, perfume, there's a floral perfume that's for sale. You don't have to buy things that are that expensive. There are things that are about £10 as well on the site. There's lots of different areas of products. And I don't think it is anything like Meghan Markle's new line, which is very, very different. And I'm sure this will inspire her, though, and maybe she'll want to form her own, I don't know, orchard something or other.
Don't give her any ideas, Helena. Don't give her any ideas. Very good sales pitch. I almost believe you could be on the payroll there, Helena Chard. Just joking. Also for sale, 35 quid for a dog bowl. Now that is a dog's dinner of a price.
It is. You see, there's lots of things for sale in all the difference. It's bone china, may I tell you. But not to forget as well the charitable aspect and the whole ethos of the King's Foundation, and that's so important. This is not just something that's going up on the website and just being sold purely to go into someone's pocket. So I think, all in all, I think everyone should have a look at the Highgrove website and see what's on for sale. I mean, there are lots of really lovely, I think pretty fairly priced products. And even more so, go and see the gardens. As we know, King Charles is a keen environmentalist and the gardens are fabulous.
Okay, Helena Chard, a very, very compelling sales pitch. You almost feel like squirting some of that pong on myself, but of course I'm far too common. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Martin. Now, you've been getting in touch in your groves, and it's got to say, the MPs being in your groves and your droves even, being signed in, hasn't particularly pleased you. You're saying this. Oscar says, my God, what an embarrassing bunch. Parliamentarians think this is just one big laugh. Ben adds this, a Labour government, a Labour speaker, what could possibly go wrong? Aidan adds this, Lindsay Hoyle, what an embarrassment. Has he got no shame after his shenanigans with Starmer? Of course, 50 MPs voted to just stop Hoyle when he extended that parliamentary sitting. You remember when the pro-Palestinian protesters were outside, that dragged on and caused all sorts of problems. Michael adds this, Keir Starmer has already got Lindsay Hall in his pocket, as we've seen before. A lot of you enjoying the fact that Nigel Farage had a go at John Bercow, the former Speaker, of course. Now, loads to come in this following hour. Stay with us, because I'll be joined soon by two of Reform UK's newly elected MPs. Lee Anderson and James McMurdoch will be here in the studio, marching over from Parliament. They'll join me, Martin Daubney, Britain's News Channel. That's your weather. Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome back to the latest weather forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It is a wet day out there for many of us. Even where it's not raining persistently, there is the risk of thundery showers with low pressure sitting over Wales and southwest England, and these weather fronts moving north, and we've seen this transfer of persistent rain into Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland through the day. Thundery showers continue to be a risk across East Wales into the Midlands, northwest England for the rest of the day. Could cause some issues in a few spots, but they'll be hit and miss. Showers continue as well in the south overnight. A lot of cloud cover as the rain pushes north into northern Scotland and continues across central and southern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. And that rains with many northern parts of the country as we begin Wednesday. But in the south, the rain less relentless. Still some showers around first thing. A lot of cloud cover as well. But the sun is trying to come through in one or two spots. Northern Ireland, though, southern and central Scotland seeing the persistent rain during Wednesday morning. Some heavy bursts in places. And the rain is starting to drive into the northeast of Scotland. That's going to be increasingly the area of concern for the rest of the day. So the rain becoming increasingly heavy and prolonged across northeast Scotland. In some spots, 30 to 50 millimetres, and in one or two of the worst on wettest areas across northeast Scotland, up to 80 or 90 millimetres of rain. That could cause some issues, some localised flooding. Yellow rain warning in force. Further south, we've still got some rain continuing across parts of Wales, southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland. Brighter skies in the far south and some warmth as the sun comes through, up to 23 or 24 Celsius. And into the evening, it's mostly fine for southern England and South Wales, whilst it's cloudier elsewhere, with that rain continuing in the far north. Friday, drier, brighter weather for many, but still the chance of a few showers.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello again to you. I'm Jules Buckley. There's issues on the M62 and the M25 this afternoon causing delays. So firstly, a westbound M62 Goole at junction 36 to the M18 at junction 35. Now still queuing at 2 lanes coned off there. It's at the scene of a collision. Also westbound, Huddersfield to Rushworth Moor, junction 23 to 22. There were animals on the road earlier. They've been moved off the carriageway but still slow going. Eastbound M62 Milne Road to Rushworth Moor. That's junction 21 to 22, slow going for the same reason. Clockwise M25, Potters Bar 24 to Enfield 25. Queuing in the road to expect a South Mims 23, not helped by an earlier bump there. And delays anti-clock on the M25, Leatherhead at 9 to Reigate at 8. It's all due to a collision there.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said storm.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Summer could be a scorcher with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster all across the UK. A new era of MPs are being sworn into the House of Commons chamber as we speak, and a short while ago, Sir Keir Starmer made his first speech in the Commons as the new Prime Minister. He was congratulated by Rishi Sunak, who spoke for the first time as leader of the opposition. Now, tomorrow night, Gareth Southgate's Three Lions take on the Netherlands in their epic Euro 2024 semi-final clash. Can they repeat Saturday's epic win against the Swiss? Or, once again, will they be coming home empty-handed? And earlier today, the Reform Party's 5 new infamous 5 MPs entered Parliament, with Lee Anderson tweeting, "The fox has entered the henhouse." I'll be joined by 2 of them, Lee Anderson and also newcomer James McMurdoch, in the studio for their first in-depth interview since being elected. And that's all coming your way before 6 p.m. Welcome to the show. Also in the news today is a certain Mr. Tony Blair. Yeah, Tony Blair, the guy who we thought hadn't been in power for quite some time. But already, within the first few days, he's advising Sir Keir Starmer on introducing ID cards, on introducing stiff new migration controls to make sure that the Reform Party don't get their claws into power. Also, making sure we get AI in. And talking tough on £150 billion worth of tax increases. Blair's back. Did he ever go away? Who's really running the country. Get in touch. Just seen Lee Anderson and James McMurdoch walked in. They're all primed to talk to us. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. But first, it's your headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Martin, thank you. Good evening to you. The top story from the GB newsroom today. Labour ministers are sitting on the government front benches for the first time in 14 years, with the new session of Parliament now underway. 643 MPs gathering ahead of Parliament's state opening next Wednesday. They're currently being sworn in one by one. And Sir Keir Starmer earlier speaking for the first time at the dispatch box as Prime Minister.
Now, as in any new Parliament, we have the opportunity and the responsibility to put an end to a politics that has too often seemed self-serving and self-obsessed, and to replace that politics of performance with the politics of service. Because service is a precondition for hope and trust, and the need to restore trust should weigh heavily on every member here, new and returning alike. We all have a duty to show that politics can be a force for good. So whatever our political differences, it's now time to turn the page, unite in a common endeavour of national renewal, and make this new Parliament a Parliament of service.
Well, in response to that, Rishi Sunak, now the leader of the opposition, congratulated Sir Keir.
Can I start by congratulating the Prime Minister on his election victory, and as he takes on his formidable task, he and his family deserve the good wishes of all of us in this House. Now, in our politics, we can argue vigorously, as the Prime Minister and I did over the past 6 weeks, but still respect each other. And whatever disputes we may have in this Parliament, I know that everyone in this House will not lose sight of the fact that we are all motivated by our desire to serve our constituents, our country, and advance the principles that we honourably believe in.
Rishi Sunak. Well, Sir Lindsay Hoyle was warmly welcomed back to the House as he was unanimously re-elected as Speaker of the House of Commons.
Before I take the chair of Speaker-elect, I wish to thank the House for the honour that is again bestowed upon me. I am aware that it is the greatest honour it can give any of its members. I propose to do all within my power to preserve and cherish its best traditions.
Well, in news away from politics, pay negotiations between England's junior doctors and the new government have ended with representatives of the British Medical Association saying the talks were constructive. 11 strikes over 20 months have caused widespread disruption to millions of hospital appointments. Health Secretary Wes Streeting has previously said he wouldn't agree to demands for a 35% pay rise. But BMA negotiators sounded a positive note at the end of today's talks.
This meeting was definitely a positive step, but I don't think we can place a value or a certainty on how quickly things are going to take to resolve or what might need to happen to make things resolve. This was definitely a collaborative talk, and I think it's fair to say we have no plans at the moment to call for strike action.
3 asylum seekers have ended their High Court legal action today after the government scrapped the Rwanda deportation scheme. Lawyers for the migrants, who can't be named, were told today that the cases would no longer proceed to court. According to the Home Office, their legal costs will now be covered by the taxpayer. It comes after the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, branded the Rwanda policy a con. Meanwhile, just a day after the first Channel migrants arrived since the Labour government took power, more small boats have been crossing the English Channel today. GB News can reveal that more than 300 illegal migrants were picked up from the Channel so far, with 4 Border Force officials and a lifeboat arriving in Dover Harbour throughout the morning. At least 6 dinghies, we understand, made the crossing despite worsening weather conditions. Labour has vowed to end small boat crossings by going after the criminal gangs. Now, Dyson is to cut up to 1,000 jobs as part of a global restructuring programme. The Wiltshire-based appliance manufacturer employs 3,500 people across the UK and is best known for the invention of the bagless vacuum cleaner, innovative fans and hairstyling products. And just lastly, Craig Bellamy has been named as the new Wales football manager. The former Liverpool forward replaces Rob Page, who was sacked in June after Wales failed to qualify for the Euros. The 44-year-old said he'll give his full commitment to develop the Wales team and can't wait to get started with the nation's league games in September. Those are your latest GB News stories for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst and I'm back in half an hour with more. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Polly. Now, MPs have now returned to the House of Commons following last week's general election, with Sir Keir Starmer addressing the House for the first time as Prime Minister, where he welcomed all new members and promised the new Parliament would be dedicated to service. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak addressed MPs for the first time as the leader of the opposition, where he apologised to those members of his party who lost their seats at the general election. And Sir Lindsay Hoyle was unanimously re-elected as Speaker of the House of Commons, with leaders of all political parties congratulating him on his victory. Now, meanwhile, Reform UK's 5 MPs entered the House of Commons for the first time today, the infamous 5, with their leader, Nigel Farage, adding his congratulations to Sir Lindsay Hoyle, whilst laying into his predecessor.
We are the new kids on the block. We have no experience in this Parliament whatsoever, even though some of us have tried many times over the years previously to get here. So we can't judge you from working in this place, but we can judge you from the way the outside world sees you. And I don't just mean the United Kingdom, I mean the world, because Prime Minister's Questions time is global box office politics, and it's pretty clear to everybody that you act with great neutrality, that you have brought tremendous dignity to the role as Speaker, so we absolutely endorse you entirely for this job. And it is, I must say, in marked contrast to the little man that was there before you and besmirched the office so dreadfully, in doing his best to overturn the biggest democratic result in the history of the country.
Well, day one and Nigel Farage is banging on about Brexit. You'd expect no less. And I'm joined in the studio now by GB News' political reporter Olivia Utley, and 2 of Reform UK's MPs, Lee Anderson, the MP for Ashfield, and James McMurdoch, the new MP for South Basildon and East Thurrock. Let's start with you, chaps. Well done. You made it into the House of Parliament. You for the second time. Lee, you put a message out this morning. The fox is in the hen house. What mayhem do you hope to achieve?
Well, this is probably, Martin, the biggest thing that not just the Labour Party but the Conservative Party feared is Reform UK getting a few MPs in the House. We've exceeded expectations, I think, and they know now that we've got probably over 4 million people voted us at the last election. Probably a few million more that actually agree with us, that they didn't quite have, the courage to vote for us because they were scared of a Starmer government. But they know the People's Army's on the march. They know we're coming for them, and they're terrified, because I tell you what, we've come in down to London today, or yesterday, with bags of common sense, and they fear that.
James, could I ask you for your surprise election? You were the 5th MP to be elected for the Reform Party, went to a recount, you scraped by 98 votes, and it probably came as a huge surprise to you. You were a paper candidate to Searcher, you didn't particularly campaign hard, you were surprised. In fact, I heard you hadn't even resigned from your job. Have you done so yet?
I have, yeah. I resigned yesterday, actually.
So how does it feel to be an MP? I mean, this is a kind of... You come from nowhere and you're now one of the infamous 5. You've got a big task ahead of you.
You know, all the way from rock bottom all the way to the absolute ceiling, the emotions have been phenomenal and fantastic. I mean, there's some analogies that I'd really love to use, but I don't know if they're too whimsical, given how serious the work we do is. But it has been extraordinary, and I really, really feel quite empowered to get on with it. There's some really good people in my constituency that are desperate for this, so it's fantastic.
I mean, you talk about getting on with it, desperate to act as quickly as possible, but, there's only 5 of you in the House of Commons. What really can you do, apart from, make some pops at John Bercow like Nigel Farage did today?
Be a blooming big pest if that's all we can be, but hopefully a lot more.
It's not just 5 people, though, is it, Olivia? There's over 4.1 million people in the country that's right behind us. That's about 800,000 people per MP. There's millions more that could have voted for us, that probably will vote for us at the next election. We are the voice of the silent majority in this country. Make no mistake about it. The People's Army is on the march, and we're at the front line, and we're going to fight for everything they stand for.
Do you think Suella Braverman might be joining the People's Army at any time soon?
I wouldn't have thought so. I wouldn't have thought so, Olivia. She's, Suella's a good friend of mine. I know she's got probably. You've got to be a fool not to know she's got leadership ambitions for the Conservative Party. Let her get on with that. But like I say, I've got a massive amount of respect for Suella. And the Conservative Party have got a big decision to make in the next few months. They've got to decide who their next leader is. Do they go for one of the wets and have more of the same and completely destroy the Conservative Party? Or do they pick a sensible Conservative like a Suella or a Rob Jenrick or a Priti Patel and hopefully make some gains?
What would you really like to see happen in that Conservative leadership contest? Because obviously if they do go with one of the Tory wets, as you call them, then Reform gets a lot more power.
I'd like to see something like Tom Tugendhat get it, and then I can go and order that new kitchen that I want for my house.
But then you have a very left-wing parliament. Is that something that you'd be happy with?
That opens the door then for the Reform supporters, voters at the next election to come and vote for us. Because I tell you what, this is a critical moment now for the Conservative Party. If they recruit a wet, somebody like Tom or somebody like that, if they do that, then they're toast. Absolute toast.
What about the party hierarchy? Nigel's obviously been a great experience in the European Parliament, but first time, 8 times trying, he got in. You've had more experience. Are you going to take some sort of senior role in the party?
Well, Nigel's made me the chief whip of the party, which I wasn't very happy about at the time. But I do realise, Martin, that I probably have got more experience in the House of Commons. Not more experience in politics, but we've got new people. It's like James today. It's his first day in there. It's a bit daunting, isn't it, James? You know, seeing all these new people, you're getting lost. There's 1,000 rooms on the estate. There's 3,000 people work on the estate. It's a big deal, Martin, so they need a little bit of guidance, a bit of help, and I'm there to do that.
So what do you realistically expect to achieve? I mean, you say you represent the silent majority, but 5 seats, proportional representation is something that Nigel talks a lot about changing the voting system, but it's unlikely to happen anytime soon. Turkeys aren't going to vote for Christmas. The first past the post system protects those in power. They won't vote to change that.
Yeah, and what a shame that is, because every other message I get right now is from typical people that just can't understand how 4 million people could vote for us and we only get 5 seats. Yeah. It just doesn't seem very in line with actually what people want.
What you good?
The Reform Party ran quite a sort of chaotic campaign, understandably, I suppose, given that you didn't have very much time to get yourselves together before the election. Nigel Farage has talked about professionalising the party. What does that actually mean? Because there really were quite a few bad apples by the sound of it.
Well, it means, Olivia, it means a proper structure in place, and that starts locally. We've got to get proper branches in place. We've got county council elections next year. We need proper branches where you've got a treasurer, you've got a secretary, you've got a selection committee, you've got a treasurer. We can raise local funds to make sure you fund the council candidates. We're a start-up party. It's very, very difficult. And what we've done over the last week is absolutely phenomenal. We've got 5 MPs. We've got donors sniffing around now. We've got supporters coming out in there, literally in their hundreds of thousands. And I tell you what, if the Tory party don't get their act together, which I don't think they will, I think it's impossible, they're toast.
Now, the Conservatives failed on the immigration point. The Labour Party have gone into bat today, and the boats continue to arrive. Over 300 arrived today, 6 dinghies. No sign anytime soon of there being a grip on that. Is that a wedge point, a pressure point that you think Reform UK will continue to make a load of noise about inside Parliament?
Well, I think we have to, because there are people at home that are deeply concerned about it. Not everyone understands the deep details going on this. They just know that there's potentially a concern there that isn't being addressed. And if you're at home, you've got a young family, and you're seeing this on the news, you've got every reason to be worried about it.
And is that what people were telling you during the campaign? I know, Ashfield, myself, I stood against you.
Yeah, you did.
Before. But in your seat, people were telling you, was that the message? It just felt unfair. And did they feel the Conservatives weren't listening?
It just feels like no action's being taken. You can only be told that there's a problem so many times and tolerate nothing being done about it.
So, I mean, presumably the Reform Party wants to get out of the European Court of Human Rights. Can you just explain in a little bit more detail what your if you could divine Keir Starmer's immigration plan, what exactly would it be? Would you bring back the Rwanda plan?
He's not got one, has he? He's not got an immigration plan. He keeps saying, he keeps piping on in the Commons and on the media and saying to anybody that will actually listen to him, we're going to smash the gangs. Nobody can tell me anywhere on this planet, Martin, what smash the gangs actually means. He hasn't got a clue.
So what would you want it to be?
I want him to send the illegal migrants back the same day. Turn them around the channel, send them back to France. That's it. You know, they've done it in other countries. We can do it here. We like political will and we like political courage. That place over there is an absolute disgrace.
Rishi Sunak sent a lot of money to France to try and get them to do exactly that. It didn't seem to work.
It's weak leadership, Olivia. It's weak leadership. You know, if people are invading our country, which they are, pick them up in the channel, rescue them in the channel and send them straight back to France. If we did that, they would stop coming.
Can I ask you about Tony Blair? His name is in the news again today. Only 2 days into this week's Parliament, he's already been advising on bringing back ID cards. He's already been advising on £150 billion worth of tax rises. Already been saying we need more AI. Seems to have his fingerprints all over the new Labour Party. Do you think Tony Blair is still in some way controlling this country?
Who's to say? I mean, I certainly don't have enough information to answer that accurately. I certainly hope not. He's not been elected.
Yeah, he needs to keep his nose out, Martin. I mean, we've seen the damage Tony Blair did in the early noughties, took us into an illegal war. He's a political parasite. He needs to keep his nose out. Multi-millionaire, making millions and millions of pounds. Obviously got a vested interest in politics in this moment in time. Look, Tony, you've had your day. Clear off, you know, and let the new boys on the block, the infamous five, you say, shape the future of this country.
Superb stuff. Thanks for joining us in the studio. Lee Anderson, the MP for Ashfield, and James McMurdoch, the new MP for the Reform Party UK for South Basildon and East Thurrock, and of course to Olivia Utley. Thank you very much. Great stuff. Now, moving on, it's time for the Great British Giveaway now, and your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, an incredible £30,000. It's totally tax-free, which means you'll get the lots to do whatever you like with. Here's all the details that you'll need for your chance to become our next big winner.
Summer could be a scorcher, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, coming up, who's got the power? Because the Prime Minister met with Metro mayors in Downing Street with a promise to push power away from Whitehall. But is this just a further layer of meddling, pointless, tax-raising politicians? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm joined now by Stefan Kyriasis to give us the latest on everything theatre.
So, yeah, we're going in first with Starlight Express, which is back. It's not in the West End. It's out at Wembley at the Troubadour Theatre, which is a big, almost kind of warehouse space, which suits because, as you know, have you seen the show?
Starlight Express was my first ever musical. I must have been about 7 or 8 years old. I only saw it once, but I remember it being magical.
Well, this one, it's 1984 it started, and it's still running in Bochum in Germany in a huge arena. So basically what we've got, they've slightly tweaked it, and it's a little boy or little girl, depending on the cast, going to bed obsessed with toy trains and dreaming of trains. Everybody is dressed up. To me, it looks like a cross between Tron and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I don't really think any of them look remotely like a train, but hey, the songs are Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's pop mixed with kind of cod 1950s rock and roll, some power ballads. The lyrics are politely like something out of an old speak and spell machine or something. You know, he's a steam train, they're out of date, he's being bullied by the diesel and the electric, and he falls for this carriage, the first-class carriage, new girl Pearl, and he wants to impress her, so he enters a race, and that's pretty much it. And when the races happen, all these barriers come up around where we're sitting, the lights are flashing, the music's thumping. It's utterly ridiculous, and I felt like a kind of teenager that was huffing sherbet dib-dabs off a giant block of sugar. It's so much fun, and the really crucial thing about it all is that somehow in the middle of all of that, I just felt myself getting into the story. And when Pearl and Rusty have their little duet, I was very moved, and there's this big starlight sequence, which is the inspiration, the magical starlight that he's seeking. It's beautiful.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 5:23. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. We can bring you live pictures now on your screens as the new Parliament of MPs are currently still being sworn into the House of Commons chamber. Now be going on for a few hours, and I believe this will continue now until round about Thursday. And moving on, all 11 regional mayors in England came together at Downing Street this morning to start a major programme of devolution under Keir Starmer's new government. The Prime Minister said he believed that those with skin in the game are the ones who know best what they need, and reportedly discussed a new partnership approach with the regions. But is a devolved approach the right thing to do? Let's get the thoughts now of the leader of the East Yorkshire Council and a board member of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership, Anne Handley. Anne, welcome to the show. So devolution on paper makes sense. It means more local accountability, more interest, more knowledge in what's going on the ground. But critics say it's yet more pointless bureaucracy, yet more cost. Where do you stand?
So I really advocate for devolution. I think it's a fantastic thing. I certainly would like to see a mayoral combined authority in East Yorkshire. We are the last part of Yorkshire that has no deal whatsoever. We have North Yorkshire, South Yorkshire and West Yorkshire doing really well, and we would like to be part of that. We would like a seat at the table with all the other mayors, from Steve Rotherham to Andy Burnham to Tracy Brabin to Ben Houchin. We would like to also, we would have loved to have been in Downing Street today with the new Prime Minister talking about devolution in East Yorkshire.
Now, the devolution of power means making sure that your party controls power. Most of the mayors across England and Wales they're Labour. They're the Labour Party. So Keir Starmer, you could argue, has got some skin in the game to make sure that the Labour Party controls areas, even if the Labour Party aren't in power in Westminster. Do you think it's a bit cynical to be devolving power to ensure that the Labour Party continues to run the regions and the cities?
Absolutely not at all. I do believe I work very well with my neighbour, Mike Ross, the leader of Hull City Council. The Liberal Democratic leader of the Hull City Council. I work well across the piece with anybody. I sit on the Northern Powerhouse. I sit on the Transport for the North. We work cross-party, and actually, for me, being a mayor is not about a political sign on you. It's about doing the right thing for your region, whatever political party you come from. I just want the right thing for East Yorkshire, and I want to be on the journey with everybody else who I feel that we are being left behind because we haven't got that deal, and I want to be at that table. I want East Yorkshire to be at that table.
OK, well, thank you very much for joining us. Anne Handley, thanks for your time. Always a pleasure. Thank you. Now, this Friday, GB News will have live coverage of the 12th of July celebrations in Northern Ireland. And GB News' Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie has been looking not only at the celebrations, but the effect they had right across the world. In this second report, he examines how, after the war, many left for the New World.
On April 18th, 1689, the Jacobites laid siege to the city of Derry. It lasted for 105 days and left 8,000 dead. It is known that even children were involved in the fighting, and one young man would write his place in history.
James MacGregor is known as the Moses of the Scots-Irish. He was born in Magilligan in 1677. Now, we know very little about his family. We know his father was a Captain David MacGregor, probably a yeomanry captain. But during the siege of Londonderry, he, his father, his mother, his brother and sister were all in the city. He becomes notable in the city because he is said to be the boy, 12 years of age, who fires the cannon from the top of St Columb's Cathedral when he sees the ships coming up the river, the Mountjoy, and the two other ships which have broken the boom.
Over the next 9 years, the civil and religious freedoms that so many had fought for were now being denied by church and state.
For Presbyterians in this era, life had become very difficult at the beginning of the 18th century. The Test Act was passed. Now, this really was penal laws against the Presbyterians. And the Presbyterians saw this as betrayal. They had fought for the Williamite Wars, they had supported the government, and now the government was banning them. Presbyterian marriages, Presbyterian funerals were banned, children were declared illegitimate, they had to pay tithes to the Church of Ireland, public office was closed to them, and so many Presbyterians felt aggrieved. They wanted difference, they wanted to get out of this.
Many of those in Ulster saw America as an opportunity to have a new way of life and the religious and civil opportunities that they yearned for. Their leader and pastor was James MacGregor.
Now, what did they take with them? They take with them their spinning wheels, they take with them flaxseed, they take seed potatoes. These things will be of benefit to them. All plans are arranged. But one of the saddest things that locally is what we call the living wakes. There were no dead people, but they might as well be dead. That was the night you left. Your family would come, your friends, your neighbours, and they would gather. And there would be hymn singing, there would be music. It wouldn't be a happy occasion.
5 ships would leave from Coleraine and Londonderry, and at the mouth of the Foyle River, Colmore Fort would be the last sight they would have of Ireland. A new world and a new adventure now lay ahead.
Now, there's lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, and we'll head to Dortmund, where England fans are beginning to gather ahead of our semi-final clash against the Netherlands tomorrow night. Just how are the fans feeling? We'll find out in a moment if any of them are even sober. But first, it's time for your latest news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
The headlines this hour: Labour ministers are sitting on the government front benches for the first time in 14 years, with a new session of Parliament now underway and hundreds of MPs being sworn in. Sir Keir Starmer paid tribute to colleagues past and present as he has made his first appearance in the House of Commons since becoming PM. Also in the news today, pay negotiations between England's junior doctors and the new government have ended, with representatives of the British Medical Association saying the talks were constructive. 11 strikes over 20 months have caused widespread disruption to millions of hospital appointments. And 3 asylum seekers have ended their High Court legal action after the government scrapped the Rwanda deportation scheme. Lawyers for the migrants, who can't be named, were told today that the cases would no longer proceed to court. According to the Home Office, their legal costs will be covered by the taxpayer. Meanwhile, just a day after the first Channel migrants arrived since the Labour government took power, more small boats are crossing the English Channel today. GB News can confirm more than 300 illegal migrants were picked up from the Channel so far today. 6 dinghies making that crossing despite the worsening weather conditions. Labour has vowed to end small boat crossings by going after the criminal gangs which organise them. And Dyson is to cut 1,000 jobs as part of its global restructuring programme. The Wiltshire-based appliance maker employs around 3,500 people across the UK and is best known for the invention of the bagless vacuum cleaner, as well as, of course, those innovative cooling fans. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in half an hour with more news for you.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Polly. Now, a load of you have been getting in touch throughout the show, and it's got to be said, you're not especially appreciative of what you've been seeing with all these MPs getting signed in. You're getting a bit bored of the pomp and ceremony of it, and let's do a few of the ones that are more printable. Maureen says this: 1 week from now, and this will be knocking off work for 8 weeks. Meanwhile, we've all got to carry on. Adam adds this: Lindsay Hoyle, wasn't he the one ambushed by Sir Keir Starmer during that Gaza vote? Mandy adds this: none of these out-of-touch MPs have ever had to live near or next door to any illegal immigrants. If they did, maybe they would do something about it. And finally, Lee Anderson just revealed on the show exclusively he's been appointed the chief whip of the Reform Party by Nigel Farage. June as is. Fantastic. Lee will whip not only the Reform MPs into shape, but also whip the wets and the Remainers in Parliament. Fantastic stuff. Thanks for those opinions. Well, joining me now is Emily Carver, who is sitting in for Michelle Dewberry on Jubes & Co. Carver & Co. awaits. What's on your menu, Emily?
Oh, we've got a lot coming up. Also going to be reflecting on a big day in Parliament. Interesting seeing the Reform 5 there. Nigel Farage had to get in that sarky comment about John Bercow. Of course he did. You could hear people groaning in the background. You could hear a few jeers, I think, too. But are they going to, roll things up a little bit in that House of Commons? I also want to know what everyone thinks about giving more power to mayors. I'm always sceptical of devolution, but could this be a good thing for democracy, or could it end up costing us quite a lot in terms of taxes and bureaucracy and the like? Also, 100,000 illegal migrants, what's going to happen to them? James Cleverly suggests, now the shadow Home Secretary, of course, suggests that Labour could introduce an amnesty. Is that the truth? What are Labour going to do as the boats continue to arrive on our shores? And also, we're going to be at that big football press conference with Gareth Southgate and Harry Kane. What will they have to say ahead of tomorrow's big match?
Sounds like a cracking menu, Emily. And as you know, I've been a massive fan of Gareth Southgate right from the very outset of this tournament. Back the guy to the hill. Fantastic show coming up. Emily Carver, 6 till 7, right after this. Thank you very much. Now, just a reminder, if you want to get in touch, simply go to gbnews.com/you're saying. I'll read out the best of your messages a little later in the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, welcome back to the latest weather forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It is a wet day out there for many of us. Even where it's not raining persistently, there is the risk of thundery showers with low pressure sitting over Wales and southwest England, and these weather fronts moving north, and we've seen this transfer of persistent rain into Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland through the day. Thundery showers continue to be a risk across East Wales into the Midlands, northwest England for the rest of the day. Could cause some issues in a few spots, but they'll be hit and miss. Showers continue as well in the south overnight. A lot of cloud cover as the rain pushes north into northern Scotland and continues across central and southern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. And that rains with many northern parts of the country as we begin Wednesday. But in the south, the rain less relentless. Still some showers around first thing. A lot of cloud cover as well. But the sun is trying to come through in one or two spots. Northern Ireland, though, southern and central Scotland seeing the persistent rain during Wednesday morning. Some heavy bursts in places. And the rain is starting to drive into the northeast of Scotland. That's going to be increasingly the area of concern for the rest of the day. So the rain becoming increasingly heavy and prolonged across northeast Scotland. In some spots, 30 to 50 millimetres, and in one or two of the worst on wettest areas across northeast Scotland, up to 80 or 90 millimetres of rain. That could cause some issues, some localised flooding. Yellow rain warning in force. Further south, we've still got some rain continuing across parts of Wales, southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland. Brighter skies in the far south and some warmth as the sun comes through, up to 23 or 24 Celsius. And into the evening, it's mostly fine for southern England and South Wales, whilst it's cloudier elsewhere, with that rain continuing in the far north. Friday, drier, brighter weather for many, but still the chance of a few showers.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Johnny Ratner in Tyne Wear on the A1. It's down to a single lane southbound on the Western Bypass junction 66 to 65 towards Birtley where a car's broken down. In East Yorkshire on the M62 westbound, only one lane's open on that three-lane stretch, 36 to 35 in Gaul and the M18 following a collision. On the M5 in Worcestershire, lanes out northbound 6 to 5 near Worcester where a lorry's broken down, and several problems on the M25. First of all, the Surrey stretch is down to 3 lanes clockwise at Staines, the junction 13, that's at the scene of an accident, and on the western stretch from 14 to 13 Heathrow to Staines following a multi-vehicle crash. And the A24 remains closed northbound Capel, Dorking and Leatherhead in 3 places for the ongoing emergency repairs. That's the latest. I'm Johnny Ratner.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back, 5:38. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now you can see on your screens now pictures of a press conference we're anticipating to happen shortly. An England football team press conference. Gareth Southgate, the manager of the Three Lions, expected to be there. And Harry Kane, captain of England, and maybe that will allay a few of these gossipy rumours that Harry Kane could be dropped. That's a hugely anticipated press conference ahead of that semi-final tomorrow night in Dortmund, 8 o'clock versus the Netherlands. We'll cut back to that, of course, as soon as it kicks off. But before that now, let's head over to Germany. And the big game is, of course, tomorrow. But there are 2 semi-finals. And tonight, Spain face France to find out who will play the Three Lions should they progress tomorrow night against the Netherlands. And let's get the thoughts now of sports broadcaster Chris Scudder, who is out there in Dortmund. Chris, you've been keeping the faith all along. You've been flying the flag. You've been saying, keep the dream alive. What's the mood on the ground amongst the fans in Dortmund?
That's pretty good. I just came up on the train from Cologne, about an hour on the train up to Dortmund this afternoon. We're going to see similar numbers, I think, probably more even than there were in Dusseldorf the other day. There's a bit of breaking news, actually. I'm hearing about the Dutch team, who, of course, are not very far away from here, neighbouring country, but their train was blocked today. They were supposed to have their own media conference this evening. Ronald Koeman and Nathan Ake, and apparently the line was blocked between Wolfsburg and Dortmund, so they couldn't take the train. They've missed the press conference, and they're going to be flying in, believe it or not, flying in from Holland to here later this evening. And then, well, they're supposed to have a UEFA press. It's mandatory, but it doesn't look as though they're going to have time to do it. So that's a bit of disruption from the Dutch camp.
Well, shame Dennis Bergkamp isn't still playing. He of course, would have refused to get on a plane. Long gone, of course. But anyway, back to... let's talk about tonight's game first. France-Spain. France haven't had their goal-scoring boots on, haven't quite got into gear. Spain looking very tasty, though. Scudder, what's the talk ahead of tonight's semi-final?
I think it's a 50-50 game, really. I mean, we've all been moaning about England and Gareth Southgate as they won. It's even worse in France, who of course have got a much richer history in terms of success than we have. They've won World Cups and Euros and all the rest of it. And they have just not been firing. No goals from open play. We've been moaning, but they haven't even scored a goal. Own goals, it just hasn't happened for France at all. And Kylian Mbappe, supposedly the world's best player, he asked to come off the other day. I mean, that was unthinkable, really. And they're a defensive team. They're like England. They're pragmatic now. They've got some fantastic players, but they, the way they look at it, Didier Deschamps, who's been there as a player, won it as a player, it's, well, if you don't like it, don't watch. Shut the curtains. That's what he's been saying. We come to win, and if they do, put on that sort of tactical, not masterclass, but if they shut the Spanish out, there's every chance that they'll beat them tonight. But I mean, I think the neutrals will be hoping that Spain come and play a bit of cavalier football and knock them out, and then play England in the final.
Yeah, certainly. Now, I've got my Dutch tie on, as you'll see tonight, but I won't have it on tomorrow night. Let's get back to tomorrow's fixture. We've got a press conference about to kick off with Gareth Southgate and Harry Kane. We talked yesterday, there was scurrilous rumours that Harry Kane might be dropped. He's about to drop at this press conference, so it's looking very unlikely. What can we expect from the team tomorrow? I've heard so much talk about they've got to get actively involved in pressing in the open play. We can't leave it until the last minute of extra time. We can't leave it until penalties once again, surely.
No, I mean, England's best stuff has come in adversity. They suddenly kick into gear when they have to, which is a good sign, of course. But I honestly don't think we're going to see too much different. I mean, I think he'll play the same system he did the other day. Maybe a change of personnel. And the reason they went from that flat back four to the three, when everyone was saying, why don't you change it, was because they had to, because of a suspension to Mark Gahey. But he's now available again. So I think he'll probably come back in. Maybe Luke Shaw playing in the left wing-back side, because one of Southgate's favourites, Kieran Trippier, has been playing there. I wouldn't be surprised if he retains him as well. But I think there's very little chance that he'll change the forward few, which means that Kane will play again with Foden and Bellingham just behind, even though those two have not been functioning together. He just loves his favourites, doesn't he? And I think he's one of these coaches who, if the team is not, well, it is. What he loves to do is to rely on individual moments of brilliance. He knows that England have got probably the best players individually here across all of the teams. There's probably 6 or 7 who get into just about any team here, and he relies on individual moments to make the breakthrough. And we've seen that. Bellingham's done it, Kane has done it, but Kane is being absolutely criticised, and some people thinking that Ivan Toney should be playing with his very fresh approach, because he's just got a few more legs. I mean, whether Kane's just not fit, I don't know, but I'd be absolutely amazed if he didn't play him. And he is the captain, of course. And if you do want that big goal when we're on to the 78th minute or something, and then go a goal down, then Kane will very often be the man to rescue England. So I'm sure he'll play. And he's talking tonight, so I mean, I'd be very surprised if he did a press conference and then didn't play.
So, Scuds, is that part of the interview where I get you to stick your finger in the air and predict for us how you think it's going to go for the Three Lions tomorrow night?
I think they'll win. I think they'll win it in regulation time. I think because the Dutch are a little bit different. There's quite a few Premier League players as well, don't forget. There's Cody Gakpo and Virgil van Dijk. All the players will know each other really well. And as I said, we'll look across the teams, and England have got better players than Holland, simple as that. But they've got to, just do... I mean, he'll keep it... It'll be tense, of course it will. It's England, it's a semi-final, it's a huge, huge game. And these things tend to be not great. And Southgate's not going to go cavalier. He'll wait for, the moment. It might go to extra time. But I think it's got a feeling that because Holland will attack more, probably, and we haven't seen any of the teams that England have played so far do that. And when they come at you a bit more, then there's a bit more room to play. And England's better players might well feed on that. So that's how I think it'll go. But, it's going to be...
OK, Scuds, I have to interrupt you there, because now let's go live to that press conference with Gareth Southgate.
In German, English and Dutch. To ask your question, please raise your hand, state your name and your media house, and let us know to whom the question is directed to. Can I have a Show of hands, please. Let's start up front here. Thank you.
Hi, it's Carve Solokol from Sky Sports. Gareth, your players have been speaking in glowing terms about you this week. Do you sense that they want to win tomorrow, not just for their country, but also for you?
I mean, look, I'm very fortunate to have a fabulous group of players, and I think we work as a team. We always have. Whenever we're talking about the games, how we've done, it's always reviewed in terms of what we could do better as a coaching team, as well as what the players might do better. We have very open dialogue about that. And the special thing about this group of players has been that the way that the 26 have really bonded over the last few weeks. You know, a lot of new players in, a lot of players with no tournament experience, half the squad. And the contributions coming into the game have been so important. You know, we've managed to get 21 of the players on the pitch, and none of those have been, you know, a dead rubber or 10 minutes that weren't important. And I think that has made people even more connected and has helped the experience of all of the squad.
Hi, Harry. Hi, Gareth. Good luck tomorrow. Henry Winter from World Soccer. Harry, just with the change in formation that we saw the other day, and with Phil and Jude sort of slightly more central, does that keep you higher up the pitch? Does it change your game in any way? Thank you.
Not specifically. I think there's times where, you know, just the rhythm of the game, maybe, you know, Jude or Phil might end up being in the middle. I might drift out to maybe the left 10, or there's different examples where, of course, as the striker, you want to try and give as much space as possible to your midfielders, to the number 10s, and but then there's times, you know, where you want to drag defenders out into spaces they might not want to come either. So, like I've said with, you know, my game always, I try and see how the game evolves, what the team needs from me, and I try and exploit those situations. But yeah, there'll be times tomorrow, of course, where I'll need to be more of a focal point and be in the box more and make sharper movements in the box. And there'll be times where I'll drop deep and try and make it uncomfortable for the defenders coming into maybe areas they don't want to be in.
Hi, Gareth. It's me. Veli from TRT Sports. Since the beginning of the tournament, in the last 5 matches you preferred to start with Trippier in left back, not with Luke Shaw, whose original position is left back. What were the reasons that you started with Trippier, and is there a possibility in that match to start with Luke Shaw against Holland?
Yeah, Luke has been injured for 4 months, so it wasn't a possibility for him to play until the last match. He made a good contribution to the game. So that's the decision we have to make, whether he's ready to start, whether that's the best way to use him. But you know, we're very happy to have him back. He obviously gives us balance, different balance with the team. But also Kieran has done a fantastic job. He's played in so many important nights for us. You know, we've had a lot of big nights over the last 7 or 8 years, and he's been so important in those occasions, but also around the squad, how he is with the rest of the players and the staff. So we're very fortunate to have players like him in our squad.
Hi, Noah Vala, Dutch television. Question to Harry. As a striker yourself, how do you look at the Dutch strikers, Memphis and Wout Weghorst as well?
Yeah, obviously they're two totally different strikers. Obviously, whoever plays, or if they both play tomorrow, they both bring something different to the Dutch team. So yeah, from our point of view, you know, we'll always analyse, you know, the other team and where they can hurt us and where we need to be careful. And yeah, they're two really good strikers. They're playing at a high level, and of course, being in the semi-final of European Championships means they're doing something well. So yeah, we hopefully will keep them quiet tomorrow, but it'll be a difficult task for sure. But yeah, we're focused on what we can do to hurt them as well, and yeah, that's what we've been preparing for.
Nathaniel Ziegler, Sport 1 Israel. Ari, after Slovakia, Jude talked about the big pressure from the crowd and from the media. How do you deal with it, and if the players speak about it in the dressing room, about the big pressure?
No, I don't think we really speak about it in the dressing room. I think, definitely the ones who have had more experience in tournaments know what it's like to play for England in major tournaments. And of course, as we've been doing better and getting better in the tournaments, the expectation gets higher, and that's been no different. So I think people will use it in different ways. Some will use it as motivation to up their game and up their level. Some will just block it out and focus on what they need to do. So everyone's different in that sense. From a team point of view, we know what we're trying to achieve. We set out from the start what we've been trying to achieve, and we're close to doing that. We have a really important game tomorrow night, a really tough game which we need to be ready for, and we've prepared for that. So from our point of view, nothing changes.
Hi, it's a question for Gareth. Gareth, it's Mike Keegan from the Daily Mail. Just wondered if you were aware of the well-publicised background of the referee for the game tomorrow night and the issues with Jude a couple of years ago, whether that caused you any concerns, and whether it was anything that you've spoken to Jude about ahead of the game?
No. I think everybody knows how I deal with referees, with complete respect for every referee. I know the two guys at UEFA, Roberto and Bjorn, who've been running the referees programme, and I think they appreciate the respect we've shown as a team to officials over 8 years. I think there's a right way to conduct yourself towards officials. I think that's very important for the image of the game. So, no, I'm not concerned about who the referee is. He will be at a very high standard because that's the way that UEFA make those decisions and the way they monitor the games that are played during the tournament. So, yeah, for me, it's not even a consideration.
Hello, Harry. Dani Quintana for Diario La Squadra from Spain. What do you think about one team like Spain and young players like Lamine Yamal and Nico Williams for a possible final?
Yeah, obviously Spain have had a fantastic tournament. They look like their players are playing with a lot of freedom, and a lot of young players who are just going out there and enjoying the occasion and getting on the ball. But Spain have been a top team for many years now, so it's no surprise that they're in a semi-final. They've obviously got a tough game tonight, which I'm sure will be a good one to watch. But fantastic players. As we're in the final four of this European Championship now. Every team is going to have a really good squad. And Spain are no different to France, us, or Holland when we play tomorrow.
Hi, it's Mareike Zek for German Radio. I would like to know both your opinions on the debate about having extra time or not. Like, should we get rid of it the next tournaments?
Yeah, that's not really for me to.
You have to run around.
I know. Yeah. No, look, it's a good question. I'm not quite sure, to be honest. Of course, there's been some great moments in extra time where teams find a goal just like Spain did in the last minute, and there's times where you can see both teams are really tired, and they're probably both waiting for penalties and then taking their opportunity from that point of view. So I don't mind it. I don't mind extra time. It always feels amazing when you come through it, and whether that's the end of extra time or penalties, you really give everything that you've got in those moments. So there's something special about coming through those moments and building that togetherness from that. But ultimately, it's not in my hands. So I'm sure whoever makes those decisions will make the right one.
Question from the very back.
Hi Gareth, Carl Matchett from The Independent. You spoke after the Switzerland game about several players being very much exhausted, and Harry was basically out on his feet when he came off, and Jude before penalties as well. You only made one sub against Slovakia before the 84th minute and none against Switzerland before the 78th, so just wondering if that is either a concern for you or part of your plan for those both games and going forward as well. Obviously you didn't make the 6th extra time sub either.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are different reasons for making changes. We were happy with the way the team were playing in a couple of those games. There was a game we made a substitution at half-time, so we don't have a preconditioned way of operating. You're always looking at the physical freshness of the team, the balance of the team, how the team are performing individually, whether changes are actually going to improve what we're doing or not. So they're the assessments that you're always making. Clearly now, it's a strange thing, in the biggest games you get less time to prepare, less time to recover, so you would assume the biggest matches you have the best preparation, but we haven't really been able to get on the training pitch. You're just walking through things or covering things in meetings, so there is a different physical aspect now, but all of the players are going into this game in good condition, recovered well. Over the next 24 hours, we keep assessing people, and the game will take us in a certain direction tomorrow that will make those decisions for us.
Hello, this is Eric from NRK Norway. Question to Gareth. Marcelo Bielsa said that football is becoming less attractive and that players who deserve to be watched will be less because football will benefit the business. What is your opinion on that?
It's difficult for me to say because I don't know the context to his comments. So, yeah, I don't know what he was asked and why he made the observations that he did.
Well, a question.
Hi Gareth, Joe Rawson, Sky News. Could be a rare occasion where the Dutch fans outnumber England fans in the stadium tomorrow. What have you done to prepare for what's promising to be such an intense atmosphere?
I think our players are used to it. One of the great things about this tournament has been the atmosphere in the stadium, the fact that so many supporters of every team it's been a different sort of feeling for our players compared to definitely the last two World Cups, and of course the last Euros was affected by restricted attendances. So it's definitely added a different feel to the games, a different intensity to the games. But our fans, whether there are more or less, will make themselves heard, I'm sure, and it will be a brilliant, colourful occasion because, my memories of playing against Holland with the orange in the stadium are really vivid. So, in the end, the players want to play in those sorts of occasions. These are the matches we want to be involved in. It's why we're involved in football, and particularly international football. You live for the tournaments. That's where we step up, and we're looking forward to that occasion.
Hi, both. James Ollie from ESPN. Good luck tomorrow. Gareth, you mentioned earlier that the squad you felt has bonded in recent weeks. Do you feel now they're in the right mindset to peak at the end of this tournament, and how do you help them do that?
Yeah, there's been a definite shift. I was really interested. As a coach, sometimes you take a step back and you observe, and one of the strengths of us over the last 7-8 years has been less fear, less inhibition. But I think at the beginning of the tournament, the expectation weighed quite heavily, and of course the external noise was louder than it's ever been. So I felt we couldn't quite get ourselves in the right place, and in the end what was impressive was that the players ground it out. They ground results out and found ways to win. I felt that shifted once we'd got into the knockout stage, and definitely in the quarter-final I thought you saw a better version of us with the ball, freer. I'm not sure any of the messaging changed, but I just felt the group changed, and you're now into that moment in the tournament where it's what's possible, what's achievable, rather than what might go wrong, and that's different for a player, for an athlete. So this is now the chance to make history, which we've enjoyed doing that. Chance to get to the first final, not held in England. First time England will have ever done that. So we're trying to break new ground. That's difficult and it's complicated, but the players have responded brilliantly, and the resilience that's been built. You can bond. We've been very fortunate. We've had Ed Sheeran in to sing, and it was great the players had a couple of beers before the last game. You can bond in that way, but when you're having to head the ball out your box in the 92nd minute and you're having to find a goal in the 96th minute, there's nothing stronger than that for building the spirit of a team.
Hi Gareth, Dan Kilpatrick, Evening Standard. I just wondered what kind of game you're expecting tomorrow. Do you expect it to be more open, or are you expecting the Dutch to sit in and kind of make it difficult for you like the other teams have done?
Well, that wouldn't be